Or you guys are sharing a mic? Isn't that cute?
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's see. Reading of the district's promise statement, mission statement, sorry. Providing an exceptional education where all students are known, valued, and empowered to thrive. Do we have any additional items for the agenda?
Nothing additional, but I did add the audit report, which you have a paper copy of it in front of you, but also we'll project it up on the screen.
Okay. So, hearing no additional items, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Laura Size. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tim Elke. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, recognition of visitors in open forum. We have a couple people in the audience, Michael Roy and Dave Olson. So any positive recognition that anybody has?
A list.
Well, I read the paper. Do you have a list?
I do.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't think so.
Congratulations to Brielle Berry for the 2024 Gopher Conference Player of the Year. Aubrey Weedman got all conference. Presley James, all conference honorable mention. And Lily Strauss, Gopher Conference Sportsmanship Award. Those four were all for volleyball. Also, just wanted to recognize the National Honor Society for their work in the Sharing and Caring Tree program. Also recognition to those of you that are, and everybody on the Bulldog Backers for their bingo event. That was, I heard was very successful. We were at the state tournament, so we could not make it. Also the JWP Service Learning and Community Leadership class helped Janesville Matters decorate the trees along Main Street. And then kudos to the, I don't know what group is doing it, but the Climb to Feed Kids fundraiser for the backpack, power pack, and high school pantry programs. And then Erica Eilertson as the 2024 Spelling Bee champion. Ava Place took second place, and Asher Wagenbach took third. And Erica is also the back-to-back champion, because she won last year. And then I also wanted to recognize Mr. Risdam for his data collection on the tracking and the analysis of the correlation between missing assignments and Fs.
Okay, I've got a few. Congratulations to Dalton Bauer for breaking the school record with 10 steals. Is that correct? I read that in the paper.
I missed that.
That's what Coach told me.
Oh, okay.
I missed that.
Fact check it.
And then Tanya Salita, who is employed with Lunchtime Solutions and is in the kitchen every day. She was actually featured as the Friday face from Lunchtime Solution. There was a second round of the MSHSL Math League, and JWP is just narrowly out of second place. And the ones that individually took places were Tyson Johnson, Seth Dahlberg, Eric Dashner, Ellie Morsheen, Alex Cleve, and Jackson Miller. And then last week, Sophie Colsey attended state FFA. Do we know?
That was a leadership conference.
Yeah, so she competed in extemporaneous speaking, where she was given half an hour to research a topic and then give like an improv speech about it. In her room of 6, she placed third in the room, and you needed to be top 2 to advance to the finals. So, just narrowly missed it.
Okay. And then the last thing I have is to congratulate Annika on the South Central Services Co-op Spotlight Recognition Award. Anybody else have any positive?
Did we already recognize football?
We haven't heard anything about football on what their awards. I have not.
All right.
Do you have them? Do you know?
Were they,
I did it like a month ago.
Yeah, we
Do
got,
you remember?
we got quite a few people on all conference, honorable mention, and I believe second team was our highest,
I think we had first team,
or did we have first team?
but I don't know.
Yeah.
I just,
So yeah, those people would have been Lucas
You know,
Morshing,
okay.
Peyton O'Brien, Dalton Bauer.
I
Do you have them all? Oh, you've got
Yeah.
them. Oh, crazy.
So Lucas Morshing was MVP, Caleb Quas, Offensive Player of the Year and All-District, Max Davis, Lineman of the Year, Ethan Bourne, Special Teams Player of the Year and All-District Honorable Mention, Rocco Scholl, Practice Player of the Year, Chase Gertz, the Dog Award, Luke Cahill, Bullsworth Award, Dalton Bauer, All-District, and Isaiah Barrett, All-District Honorable Mention. Oh, and Peyton O'Brien, Defensive Player of the Year and All-District.
Nice.
awesome.
Quite a few.
thank you.
Anything
Eric.
else?
Well done.
Well, there are multiple trainings that, as school board members, that we can take. And I want to congratulate Kevin Bourne and present him with a certificate for completing phases 1 through 4.
Way to go, Kevin.
And then, sad day for some of us, a happy day for others maybe, I don't know. But this will be a couple of board members at the last board meeting. So with that, we have a plaque here for Tim Burke, who in recognition of 6 years of outstanding service and strong commitment to the students and staff of Janesville Waldorf Pemberton Schools.
Oh,
Speech.
Thank you.
It was a great honor.
Perfect.
And the other one, I don't know if I can count that high, but Tim Elke from 2009 to 2024 for 16 years of outstanding service and strong commitment.
Kids aren't even that old.
Okay. Anything else positive recognition before we move on? Okay, we will move on to
resolution.
the donations, if I can open it up. You want to just, oh, wait,
I got it.
So, we have received $6,041 from multiple friends and family of Darwin Lochner for the Darwin and Karen Lochner Scholarship Fund. From Taylor Family Farms Foundation, $9,500 for resuscitation quality improvement equipment and curriculum. Bulldog Backers, $1,382 for graphing calculators. And the Waseca Area Foundation, $1,000 for the John Preeb Memorial Scholarship. So, do I have a motion to accept the resolution donations?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Tim Burke. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Laura Size.
Olson? Yes. Gale? Yes. Elke?
Yes.
Size?
Yes.
Bourne?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Dashner?
Yes.
Who is the Taylor Family Farms?
It's a grant that Laura wrote,
Oh,
so
so nobody local.
nobody local.
All right. Motion carries 7-0. So now we will go on to the student representatives report.
All right. So, first thing, last Monday, we had our choir concert. All people in choir from grades 7 through 12 performed. That was a fun showcase. And then we have a band concert tonight, 5 through 12. I think the 5 through 7 is going to be starting in 20 minutes. And then 8 through 12 will be right after them. Both Ethan and I believe, are hopeful that we will be a part of concert choir next semester, possibly, if it gets approved and all of that. So we're excited for that, to have a mixed choir and have more advanced material and all of that. The psychology class for this semester went on a field trip to the Cato escape room, which was a lot of fun. Both of the groups made it out of the escape room. And then the last thing for me, Ethan's got some, but I'm excited and ready to talk about the attendance policy.
So I've got more the sports side of it. Our wrestling team, from what I've heard, they've got a really strong roster and they're hopeful for the season. The girls are obviously crushing it on the basketball court. What are they, 6-0? And pretty impressively so. And then the fellas at the Maple River tournament, we had 2 people recognized as tournament players of the tournament. So that was the Bauer brothers, and yeah. So should have a pretty fun season to watch.
Yeah. Anything else? Does anybody have questions for him? All right. Thank you for sharing. On to the superintendent report.
I have a few things. For community engagement, Wendy's been working on our asset inventory update, and then she also did school funding 101 for our cabinet group this morning, so that was good. Our principals have been working on observations. They've been going well. They're celebrating standout students this week. Something new in the high school, so that's something Mr. Rysdam has started. And they're both starting to look towards the end of the year and next year. Hard to believe that we're looking that far into it. So those are all growth, student growth, achievement, and support topics for our strategic plan. Another community engagement is that our community ed director is looking at a class called Super Saturdays for our ECFE program for students and families, looking at having some Saturday morning activities in here in Janesville at the school, but also in Pemberton and Waldorf. She's got an advisory committee that's starting this week also. Buildings and grounds, we had a leak in our building that we found out about from the city due to their monitoring of our system. That got fixed Friday morning, and then on Monday, the whole building, the power will be shut off in the whole building for a little bit, so they can start the solar project, start with the solar energy that we have. From Casey, for student growth achievement support, along with staff support, is our letters training is going well, and PLCs are running well, so that's a good thing. Adam's waiting to hear back from on some cybersecurity grants, and he's looking at the testing schedule for spring. Annika's will be starting some staff retention interviews after the first of the year. So with new employees, also with senior employees. And then Laura, it was mentioned in here, she got a grant for, it's a resuscitation quality device for CPR training. So they'll be using that both in the classroom, and we can use it for staff. And she's looking at dates for a dental clinic. This fall, we had a dental clinic that went 3 days. They're looking for dates for 3 days in the spring also. May not take 3 days in the spring, but they're working on that. Sheila attended a training this past weekend about handling emergency life-threatening injuries and defensive tactics with active shooters. And she got some information about how we could get some bleeding control kits at wholesale cost. She'll also be starting with her DARE curriculum after the first semester is over, so in late January. In special education, we're working as a group to shore up the due process paperwork. And then last week, we had new school board member orientation. And then next month, at our organizational meeting, I'm going to be talking to the whole board about having the principals and Casey at our study sessions. So that's what I got for tonight.
Any questions? Okay. If not, we will move on to Greg Burkhart is here to go over the 2024 audit report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, just wanted to make sure Katie's in as an excuse absence, 'cause of the game tomorrow.
All right, as mentioned, I am Greg Burkhart, and I represent the firm. I represent the firm that performed the financial audit for the school district over your records for the period ending June 30th, 2024. All right, so tonight is the culmination of that audit. What I'd like to do is talk to the school board about that audit process. Provide some information. I'm sure you've all heard that the auditors come on site and we spend time doing what we do, and it is a lengthy process. What I'd like to do is just provide some clarity so that you all better understand what is the audit, what is it designed to do, and how can you use that information to better manage the financial affairs of the district. All right, so tonight I'm going to have a slideshow presentation that I'm going to go over, and it's going to describe the different responsibilities that are present during the audit. It's going to talk about a handful of things that professional standards require that I communicate to governance. And I'm going to end this presentation with a brief overview of the financial condition of the district. Okay? So at any time during the presentation, if there's something that you want me to explain further, or you have questions, or there's something that I don't have up here that you're interested in, please stop me, and I'm very happy to answer any of those questions as they may come up. All right, so what we'll do here is we'll get started on the very first slide. The slide you see in front of you here describes management's responsibilities for financial reporting. All right, so management has two primary responsibilities. First and foremost is for your basic financial statements, right? The financial numbers that you guys have in your audited financial statements. Management is required to make all the accounting decisions, all right? And there's several of those. And certainly management does look to the audit firm to provide guidance and assistance, especially for new or developing accounting pronouncements, and we're very happy to do so. However, that responsibility does solely lie with management. The other primary responsibility that management holds is for maintenance of internal controls. All right, and I'll just briefly describe what that means. So your internal controls are just simply your policies and procedures that you have in place that will safeguard your assets, whether that be financial assets, so your cash in the bank, your investment accounts. It does include capital assets, your equipment, computers, office furniture, this building. All of that is incorporated into that. All right, and it also requires management to find and correct any errors that may be present in your financial records. Okay. This next slide will describe your audit firm's responsibilities. All right, so my responsibilities are really threefold, and they revolve around the different reports that we provide over our audit. All right, the very first one you see on the left-hand side there is to provide a financial opinion. All right, so what we do is we take a look at those numbers and we try to determine, are they accurately representative of the transactions and the balances that happened during fiscal year 24. All right, we conducted that audit under government auditing standards. All right, that is a requirement from Minnesota Department of Ed. Government auditing standards requires a little bit more thorough, deeper dive into your financial records to ensure that everything is operating correctly. All right, and those audit standards also require that we obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. All right, so what does that mean? All right, so that means if I were to tell the board at the end of last fiscal year, you had approximately $5.3 million of cash and investments, I can prove that. I can prove that because I have evidence to support that. So all the numbers that you see in your financial statements have that same level of backing, they have that same evidence. Those are numbers that you can rely upon. All right, the middle section on slide 3 describes our report on internal controls. Again, those policies and procedures. And what we do is we look at what you have in place and we attempt to determine, are those policies appropriate based on the facts and circumstances that the district finds itself in. If we see something that doesn't quite measure up, or something that needs to be improved upon, we provide a report describing what we found and recommendations for improvement. And finally, on the right-hand side, we also provide a report over Minnesota legal compliance. The state auditor requires every district to be evaluated against 7 broad categories of compliance. And we actually spend an awful lot of time in this section of the audit while we perform our procedures to trying to determine if there was an instance of non-compliance, we would find it, we see it, we'll report on it, and then also provide recommendations to ensure that that does not continue to happen. All right, this very next slide here is a summarized results of the audit for the year. So starting at the very top section there under financial opinion, you can see it states that we had issued the district an unmodified audit opinion. And that is, in air quotes, your clean audit report. So all the numbers that you see in your financial statements accurately and fairly represent what happened last fiscal year. Fabulous. That's exactly what you want to hear. The middle section there under internal controls describes some of the policies or some of the procedures that either are lacking or need improvement. All right, you see 4 items listed there. The first 2 are items that can and should be improved upon this coming fiscal year. Those are related to adjusting journal entries and bank reconciliations. All right, the adjusting journal entries, just essentially what that is we, as an audit firm, required to make certain corrections in your financial statements. And those corrections exceeded a dollar threshold that we place in every audit. All right, we call that a material change. Had we not made those changes, your financial statements may not have been a clean audit report. All right, so our recommendation there is to look at those journal entries and try to determine which ones you are comfortable performing internally, and we would ask that the district do that internally. The one related to the bank reconciliations, essentially what we found this past fiscal year is that some of those reconciliations happen months and months after the month close. Okay, and I know you're receiving assistance from the region, helping perform some of those duties. It still is a responsibility of management, so our recommendation there is to strive to try to get those reconciliations performed within a few weeks after month close. There's several reasons for that. The most important one is that you can ensure that all the activity that's reported to the board monthly is accurately represented. The next 2 listed, or the final 2, auditor prepared financial statements and limited segregation of duties, really relates to the size of the staff here with the district. It's a consequence of having too few people doing too many responsibilities. Okay, doesn't mean it's not important. These are items that are going to be difficult to correct. So we ask the board to just maintain your awareness that having too few people do too many responsibilities can create some problems. There is risk involved there. And it's not always a concern or a risk of fraud. It's more so a risk that there could be errors present that aren't uncovered. It's very difficult to audit your own work or to edit your own work. It's easy to make those mistakes. So we would just ask the board to please maintain your involvement in the financial condition of the district, and hopefully somebody will see something that may potentially be wrong and correct it before it becomes a bigger issue. And then finally, at the bottom of slide 4, under Minnesota legal compliance, we did unfortunately have one compliance finding this year. It related to unclaimed property. The district's required to file a report annually if you hold property that has been abandoned, is really what it refers to. And it relates to some of the items that were present on your bank reconciliation at the end of the year. I've spoken to management about this. A recommendation there is to just calendar reminders, ensure that you get that report done. I believe it's due in November annually, so that if you hold, and it really is related to outstanding checks that were over 3 years old. So if you hold any of those, you have to get a hold of the Department of Commerce and have that report submitted and potentially remit that property to the state. Okay, moving forward. So slide number 5, and actually the next 2 slides. Absolutely, go ahead.
You can tell me where the appropriate time to ask would be, is a lot of us in our own businesses, we're dealing with a lot of extra fraud that hasn't been there in the past, or risk of fraud, whether it be phishing attempts or, many other ways. Just curious what kind of recommendations you're making school districts like us take in relation to trying to protect ourselves from such fraud, scamming, hacking, all the above.
That's a great question. I would certainly start with your infrastructure, your technology infrastructure, as far as spamming and spoofing of emails. I know that's one of the main ways that these are happening, and we're seeing this throughout districts statewide. One of the things that concerns me was with this bank reconciliation not being performed timely. If there are external parties that are attempting to defraud the district, a lot of times, again, it can happen internally, but that's not what we normally see. It's usually a third party. So if you pay a vendor, you think about the information that you provide that vendor. If you pay them with check, you provide them an account number and a routing number for your bank with signatures. The way technology is nowadays, it's very easy to pull signatures off of there and recreate checks and attempt to run them through your account, through your bank account. So you run that risk. If you can find it soon after it occurs, you have a much higher likelihood to get that money returned.
Sure.
So there is, unfortunately, the way that municipal governments work, you write checks for just about everything you purchase. So P cards, a lot of times districts are worried that P cards, purchase cards, credit cards can create a higher risk of fraud, and they do sometimes. However, you're backed, but you have much better opportunity to receive money back if there was ever a fraud occurred. Not to mention there is a credit limit involved there as well, so you could limit the potential magnitude of that. But being timely with your reports and evaluating all transactions that go through your bank is going to be your biggest ability to mitigate that risk of fraud. And just keep a close eye on everything. Honestly, it's the Wild West out there to a certain extent, quite honestly. So, does that answer your question?
Sure, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so back to slide number 5, and as I was mentioning, the next 2 slides, rather, are information that professional standards require that I communicate to governance. I'm not going to go over any of these 2 slides in any great detail. This information is more fully developed in a report called a management report that I provided to the district. So I would encourage all board members to take a look at that when you get time. The one thing I do want to point out, though, on slide 5 is the very top section under auditor assurance. This is an important nuance to understand as you proceed through a financial audit. And I'm not going to read that statement back to you, but really what it's saying is that an audit is not designed to be perfect. We perform our procedures under professional standards, and we feel we do a very good job, a very thorough job, but that doesn't mean that something may not be lurking buried up in the number somewhere. So what I'd like for the board to have is some awareness that although you did receive a clean report, you had a few things going on in your internal controls, your compliance came through okay except for that one item, please don't take that to mean that everything is fine. Continue your active involvement in the financial affairs of the district. Simply because you had a clean audit doesn't mean all is going to continue to be in good shape. Okay? On to the next slide, slide number 6, is continuation of some of these required communications. We are required to describe those changes that we made to your records as you see them internally versus how you find them in your audited financial statements. We did propose 30 journal entries. 23 of those we would consider corrections, 8 of which exceeded that materiality threshold. That magnitude was large enough for us to say, we don't make it, your financial statements are gonna be in more difficult condition. Those journal entries are also included in that management report as well, if you're interested to see what's going on there. Then finally, we are required to talk about, or we do talk about any difficulties that we encountered during the audit process. We did not have any. Jeremy and Wendy were fabulous as far as getting all the records available to us. Every item that we selected for testing, they were able to provide. All the schedules that we asked to have prepared were prepared, and I want to thank you both for the efforts that you put into this audit. I get to come up here and talk about how everything went well and take the accolades for that, but it really, I couldn't do my job without the support that the district provided me, so thank you two very much. All right, continuing on here, so slide number 7, we generally have several recommendations as we go through the audit process. We do look thoroughly into your records. We see certain trends develop. We see items sometimes that can be improved upon, whether it be to take advantage of certain conditions to better position the district. We do have several recommendations. I'm not going to go through those again. Those are listed in that management report. The majority of those recommendations, at least the important ones, are in some type of process of being completed by management. Okay? Continuing on, so from here forward, so we've got through a lot of the legalese, if you will, of the audit. So from here forward, what I'd like to do is just go over the financial condition of the district. All right, we're going to take a high-level overview of that to hopefully provide us with some understanding of, where was the district, let's say 3 or 4 years ago. How do you look right now, and hopefully that'll give us some clues. Where will the district be in the near future? Okay. So slide number 9 includes a handful of highlights. So as I was preparing for this meeting, looking over your financial statements, I evaluated that and said, okay, what looks good? What are these highlights? What's important? And if you don't remember anything else from what I talk about here forward, these are 3 points that are very, something to be very proud of. So the district was able to pay off one of your bonds early, that 2014 A facility bond. Your total long-term liabilities decreased $1.7 million. So that's fabulous. And your governmental fund revenues increased by a little over $550,000. All excellent results, all something to be proud of. So continuing on with this financial analysis, what we see here in front of us on slide number 10 is a representation of the district's unrestricted fund balance over the past 5 years. All right, so what you're seeing here, if we just focus in on those blue bars right there, that represents the statewide average. And just understand that these are averages. There's very large districts, very small districts. You guys fit somewhere in the middle there. The red bar represents JWP. Okay? So as I look at this, there isn't a lot of actionable information here other than to see some of these trends. So as you can see, from 2018 through to 2021, your unrestricted fund balance increased nicely. And it topped out at approximately 54%. Almost double, well, it is double what the statewide average is. All right? From 21 all the way through to the end of fiscal 24, your unrestricted fund balance has decreased. There's several reasons why. Some of that had to do with the expiration of some of the COVID money that you received in the past. Some of that has to do with your total enrollment, especially this past year. All right, so right now, at the end of 24, you are trending much closer to what that statewide average is. All right, so nothing to be overly alarmed at, as long as that trend starts to flatten out a little bit. If it continues to see the decreases that you have, there could be some potential issues looming on the horizon. Okay. Continuing on, slide number 11. What we see here on slide 11 is similar to slide 10, but this is just for the general fund. Okay. So let me just explain again. We have 5 years listed here. The red bar, or excuse me, got flipped around here. The blue bar is your cash and investment balances for the general fund. The red represents, again, that unrestricted portion of your fund balance. And then the gray line there describes your operating expenditures. Again, very similar trend here with the general fund. You do see a decrease from 21 forward into fiscal 24 with your cash. Same thing going on with that unrestricted fund balance. Again, it peaked out there in 2022 and then has seen some decreases these past few years. So at the end of fiscal 24, the general fund actually had 3.6 million of cash and investments. However, your unrestricted fund balance is now at 2 million, which is a decrease of approximately $1.2 million. Okay, that decrease, there's a few reasons why that decrease is as large as it was. Your restricted fund balance actually went up, which isn't a bad thing entirely, but it does, it includes resources that can only be spent for certain purposes, okay? So it's important to manage that unrestricted piece so that you have financial flexibility. There was also a fairly significant loss in the general fund this year. We don't really say profit loss in the government sector. It's more change in fund balance, and you had a large deficit change in fund balance for the general fund of approximately $900,000. So those two items coupled together is why that unrestricted piece went down approximately $1.2 million. Okay. Moving on, well, that certainly did not come through as we hoped. That's all right. So what we see here on your print-offs, it shows a little bit better. Slide number 12 is a representation of the general fund's expenditures. Where does all that money go, and what relative categories are they being spent in? And as you can see, and I'm sure it's not a surprise to anyone here, this district spends approximately 65% of your general fund on regular instruction. No surprise. The next largest component there is support services at 17%. So a little over 80%, or almost 80% of the general fund is your district or your direct instruction with your support services. Okay. The general fund, as I've already mentioned, the total general fund expenditures were approximately $11 million, about 4% more than what you saw in the past fiscal year. Your expenditures, however, were over budget by $1.1 million. Okay, so I've asked management to take a look at that budget process in future fiscal years to ensure that those budgets are more closely aligned with what your actual expenditure expectations are. There were several items that were over budget. Salaries were one of the larger components. Some capital expenditures were another, and then transportation was a final one. Those were the largest pieces of your budget that were over budget. All right, continuing on, slide 13. So there's other funds that the city that the district maintains that aren't the general fund. All right, we call these other operating funds, specifically the food service and your community service special revenue funds. All right, so what you see here are the relative fund balances for your net worth for those two activities. On the left-hand side is a food service, right-hand side is a community service. So as we look at this, probably the thing that pops out to me the most, or stands out the most, is your food service from fiscal 23 into fiscal 24. There was a decrease there of approximately $226,000, leaving approximately $9,000 in fund balance in your food service fund. Your food service fund is there to kind of just maintain the status quo. You don't need to see large profits or large decreases. You want to just continue to fund that activity and try to maintain an adequate amount of fund balance. However, what you can't do, what you want to be watchful and mindful of, is not to go into a deficit scenario. The state will look at that and they'll ask the district to make some type of a change to pull that back out. One of the bigger reasons for that large loss this year was purchase of capital equipment. There were some dishwashers that were purchased, approximately $115,000. All right. Don't anticipate, I wouldn't imagine the district anticipates that kind of capital expenditure in the future. But if you do, you got to be mindful of that amount of fund balance that you have. The community service fund is actually in a deficit now, that bar. If you look at that on the far right-hand side there, fiscal 24 ended about a $30,000 deficit, okay? Handful of reasons there. I kind of looked through a lot of the records, and really it boils down to your revenues are down, your levy is down about 25,000, your fees from patrons, services is down about 25,000, coupled with your expenditures being up approximately 30,000 is what drove that loss that you saw in fiscal '24. And that loss was approximately $150,000 on the heels of a loss in '23 of almost 50,000. So over the past 2 fiscal years, we've seen that fund balance decrease almost $200,000. All right, so the state's not gonna come in here and tell you that you gotta raise that, but there needs to be some consideration for that community service fund. You're down to approximately $1,000 in cash in that activity, all right? So, again, something to really consider strongly as you continue to budget and bring in your amended budgets here this fiscal year and into the future. Yep.
So you use the word levy. How is levy associated with community services fund balance?
Well, there's several levies there. So you have an early childhood, family education levy, drawn a blank on some of the others. There's at least 2 or 3 levy items that are specifically created for and collected in that community service.
Okay.
The
In community
predominance of the
service.
revenues, however, are service related. So your before school and after school care,
Right.
those sorts of items.
Right. Okay.
Great question. Okay, so, that is everything that I wanted to discuss with you folks tonight. It's not all bad news. I think, we did kind of harp on the fund balances there for the operating funds this past, the previous slide. Make no mistake, the general fund is sitting in really good shape. 3.6 million in cash and investments. You've got an unrestricted fund balance that exceeds the statewide average. You're okay, but things can change quickly, so just please be cognizant of that. Again, watch those budgets, make realistic budgets, and do your best to try to spend within those confines. All right, so what we see here on this slide 14, this is your audit team, myself, Greg Burkhardt, I am the partner on the audit. Jeff, Paul, Luke, and Dane also assisted. I don't know if it comes through in my presentation style, but this is probably the one thing I enjoy most about my job, is coming out here and boring you guys to death with some of these financial numbers. It is important. The reason I bring this up, I've got my phone number on there, my email address. I stay in contact with Jeremy and Wendy throughout the year, but I would also like to extend that opportunity to the board at large. If there is ever something that you have concern or question about, or you want an unbiased, unvarnished opinion from your auditor, please reach out to me. And matter of fact, anybody in the audit team would be very, very happy to assist you with anything that may come.
Okay.
All
Any
right.
questions? Any other questions? If not, thank you, Greg, for coming and presenting.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're on to budget information. Enrollment update.
Enrollment, we're down 2 students compared to last month. So we have a 7th grader, and then the other one was an 11th grader, so.
Anything specific?
Nothing specific. I know we have a couple students that will be starting after the first of the year also. David, do you know if these students are returning?
One, the 11th grader hopes to return next year.
Okay.
He gets all caught up.
Thank you.
I'm trying to pinpoint the 7th grader. The 7th grader, I don't think he will. If I can double check.
Okay.
Do the foreign exchange students get included into this as well?
In this enrollment numbers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because I know one 11th grader is leaving after the first semester's over.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay, next is the historical cash balances.
And Wendy stepped out to go watch the concert since her daughter's in it.
Any questions on that? All right, on to committee reports. Were there any committees that met?
Nope.
Yes,
Which one?
the finance and operations, buildings and ground. It's been a while.
That was
It was
probably when
before-
in November. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have been
it was
there.
before,
Yeah.
it was between our, but,
Down at the game.
yeah, we talked about, the girls' locker room doing individual stalls for their, you know, like the boys' locker room has the individual stalls, girls, they're looking to do that. We talked about, cubicles out here, putting them out there for additional staff and possible, like, in-school suspensions or whatever our needs might be. The roof, the re-roofing was complete, they were waiting on the warranty certificate, I don't know if we got that yet or not, or, you know.
I haven't been told either way that we have or have not.
And then, the solar panels, Jeremy talked about those, we'll get the meter installed on the 23rd. And then, I don't know, you might announced it in the group, but we have a new projector installed in the auditorium that Adam found a really good deal on. And then the softball field repairs and cleaning have been finished for the year. And that was all the buildings and grounds. I don't know if there was anything else that we talked about that wasn't on here. And then for finance, went through the audit stuff and the levy options, and then just discussed the truth and taxation, and then that the project closeout, or project work, wherever we don't have that checking account anymore, that's closed. So I think that was pretty much everything we talked about. Did I miss anything?
Any questions on that? No other committees met?
No.
Okay, on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be removed, that you would like removed from the consent agenda?
The one thing to note is on our personnel and staff changes. Right now, Josh Sorensen, our choir teacher, is at a .86. We have a chamber choir that has come forward. As of Friday, we had 9 students signed up for that, possibly a 10th one. I'd have to check into that, but it would be increasing his contract for second semester from a .86 to a 1.0. I did a little bit of number crunching, and first semester he was serving 61 students. Second semester he would be serving 68 students. If there is that 10th person in the chamber choir, the students that are requesting to be in the chamber choir are not being taken out of the other choirs. This would just be a class that would open up and it fits into their schedules for a first hour choir.
So he's teaching how many hours out of the day right now? 5?
4.
4? So he's averaging about 13 kids a class?
Boys,
I'm just
yeah,
asking.
4. And there's 61 in there, so. What? Yeah.
And some of these kids that are gonna go into this advanced choir are already in a choir class?
They're not in a choir.
Oh, I thought you said they were.
No, they're
Oh,
not in a choir.
okay.
So it's not taking away from the other choirs that are
Mhm.
there.
They would be taking 2 choirs, so there are some that would be in base.
Yeah, so so you have some that are in choir, now they're gonna be in advanced choir also.
Yes, they'll be taking 2 choirs rather than switching from one choir to the other.
So then that 68 students
really less than 68 if you look at, because they're taking 2 choir classes then. So,
No, I think they
No,
were
the
68 individuals.
Would be the increase, because you're talking about an increase of 7 students. and
Yeah.
There's 10 that are gonna be.
Yeah.
okay, yep.
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 Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Laura Size. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joni Olson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Did you want to go over some of the strategic plan? I know in your superintendent report, you talked about the ones that you touched on. Did you have anything else you want to add?
Not at this time. Things have been going well and moving in the right direction, so.
One thing I might mention with the community engagement, if we do that,
Newsletter,
newsletter, that we might wanna
it's just about done, so.
focus on some of
Yep.
these in the I don't know if we don't need to necessarily put in this one, but some of these things that he talked about, you know, some of the highlights and stuff.
Absolutely,
So,
yep.
something to consider.
We received this at like 4:45 today or
Yeah.
5 o'clock, so, yeah, we'll get it put in
And
there. We have
you
a
might wanna
spot for it.
explain a little bit about what they mean too, so
Yep.
people understand it.
All right, on to old business. We have David Rysdam here to discuss the technology and cell phone policy.
Thank you very much. I don't know what I would do without you. Next year, I'm gonna be lost. Okay, so this is more really to kind of start a conversation, maybe not come up so much with solutions. To this point, cell phone policy has been going relatively well, and I think we're seeing some of the results of that, amongst other things. But with every solution, we find different issues, right? Students are smart, and they figure stuff out. And one of the things we're running into now is personal devices, right? Well, I don't need the school computer, I got my own laptop, I'll bring that in and I'll beat the system that way. And it's gotten to the point now where it's, a few of the students are like pushing it to the point where you can't not see it, where you can't not like get into it a bit. And so I want to start that conversation because there are a lot of considerations to take into effect here. Normally, and when I say normally, 70% or more of the high school principals I talk to will say, well, we have a different set of rules for our 7 through 10, or 11 and 12 because of PSEO, because of online, because of all these things. They have a different kind of criteria they have to meet, which means that they could have their own devices, they could have maybe more access to personal whatever. So I want to start that conversation with the school board as to what you guys want it to look like. I'm fine with just about whatever direction you guys want to point me in. And like the adults in the building, I like to think that older kids are capable of handling more responsibilities as long as it's addressed correctly and understood correctly, all the ins and outs of it. So that's really what I'm here to do tonight, is to kind of, how is this going to take shape moving forward? What do we want it to look like? And then what are our justifications for it? So that's what I came here for. These are questions I don't have the answer to quite yet. I can tell you what is happening in other places, but there's, you know, until we figure that out, here we are. And I'm sure we're gonna have two great opinions over here. I already know what they're gonna do.
So do you want to go into a few more details? I mean, are we talking smartwatches? Are we talking?
Well, it's gonna be smartwatches, it's gonna be iPads, it's gonna be my computer that I need for drafting class, it's gonna be, you know, a lot of those things, right?
Mhm.
Well, if we're providing space here for them, or it's just easier for them to carry one device around, other than having two. The other part of it would be, how much control do we have over these devices? This is something that I brought up in our own annual meetings, and we go back and forth on it. But go so far as to putting Chromebook carts, and students have to check out, so that way the teachers have control of the Chromebook all day long. If you want it, you gotta do homework break, check it out, bring it home, bring it back the next day type of thing. That way there isn't time to find workarounds, or we're not wasting time. And you'll have teachers that will say it is a waste of time, because now they gotta check into it. We can have that argument all day long.
Mhm.
There's pros and cons to everything. However, what is the goal? And what do we want it to look like? And how much do we want to develop our students' sense of responsibility? Or do we just want to say, nope? You know, again, these are all things that I have constant dialogue in my head with about 3 or 4 different things at any one time. You guys can walk by my office and see me talking to myself, and this is one of the conversations I have. Because it is something that I don't know that there's a correct answer to unless there's follow through, like most things.
I think one example would be that when a student brings their own device in, we can't control their YouTube. We can control YouTube on their Chromebooks. So then they're on YouTube, or they're on Netflix, or they're on something else, watching a movie in the middle of class, or this or that. We can control that when it's their Chromebooks, but we can't control it when it's their own device.
How many situations are there like this currently?
A heck of a lot less than there used to be, you know what I mean? But again, we're getting into the fine details, which is, I mean, the simple fact that we're having this conversation is a win in my opinion. And so early, and we're not even halfway through the year, and we're starting to try to fine tune this thing. So, does it happen? Sure. Is it rampant? Whatever? No. But it certainly does happen. Kids are kids. They're gonna push and they're gonna do what they're gonna do.
Yeah, you gave the example of drafting class not having that software program on there.
CAD,
Can we
things like
have
that.
those on the Chromebooks?
Chromebook won't run it.
Not
It doesn't have
powerful
capacity
enough.
for it. It's a very powerful program, very detailed. Heck of a lot of fun if you know what you're doing with it. But the Chromebooks won't support it.
Are there other situations where we could have like stations for those, for that to be on a computer, school-owned computer? We get some bigger ones, better ones?
I don't know, that's why I'm bringing the question. You know what I mean? That's why I'm bringing it here, just so we can have a conversation. This isn't about, this is looking for answers and
Yep.
what's going to fit our district the best at this point. And I don't have that answer.
I thought that all of the drafting stuff and all of that just happens on a computer that is kept specifically in the shop and all of that.
Yeah, but that's just for the shop. We're talking about the computer classes that are done through the High Step program, through South Central. That's when you're gonna get your CAD, your AutoCAD, all of that stuff. So yeah, the drafting class has their own thing, it runs everything, but that's a standalone. It sits there, it doesn't do much other than that. Whereas these other computers that kids need for some of these high-level classes, they need to be able to run it, they need to be able to run smoothly, they need to be able to run it on any network. And so therefore they're running into some of these concerns. you know.
My suggestion would be limiting it to the kids that do take those classes, where if you're not in a PSEO class that requires that, or you're not taking a class that would need that, just from the misuse or non-educational use of the ones that I see, it's not by students that are taking these
Well, I don't
classes.
disagree. I absolutely don't disagree with that.
So are you saying we allow personal devices to come in if they're not in those classes?
To this point, it's been,
Oh,
yeah.
well, that would be, yeah, I guess I didn't know that.
To this
Okay.
point, leading up to where we're at right now, yeah, it's always been a thing. It just hasn't been as accentuated.
Sure.
Because they could get on their phones. Right?
Understand.
So
I-
now all of a sudden, I can't get on my phone, I'm gonna beat the system with bringing.
Believe me, I remember the night we initiated that. I was at a basketball game, and one of the players came up after the game, after they complained about the cell phone policy, and said, don't worry about it, I can still go on it on my Chromebook or my personal device.
Personal device, and then we shut it down on the phone.
So yeah, they were very clear of how they were gonna get around it immediately.
So again, like I said, things are working, but how do we make that move? So,
Well, from, yeah,
Just
go
a
ahead,
question,
Joan.
is this, the issue occurring, like, is the problem during instructional time? So, for right now, like you're talking, there's no need for me to have this open. It's easy to see somebody has their device open and viewing, but
Right.
if you're instructing me, I should have it closed.
And I think if it comes down to opportunity, it's gonna happen
Mhm.
anytime.
Yep,
I mean, it will depend on the kid, depending upon the day,
sure.
right? I'm shut down today, I don't wanna do anything, okay, here's my, whatever. You might not see it again for another month from the kid, but
Mhm.
most of the time you're gonna see it from the same kids, probably doing the same thing during the same classes. Again, like I said,
But it's much easier to monitor that a kid is doing something rather than on their phone, right? To have their own device. If teachers are walking around, they can
if
see they're
teachers are
on
walking
something
around,
else.
like, the Chromebooks though, you
Mhm.
can set up any one of
Yep.
5 or 6 programs and let me see exactly what's on the Chromebook, or I can
Mhm.
limit it to, you're on
Yeah.
this one
Yeah.
website today and
Understand
that's
that.
it,
Mhm.
type of things. Yeah.
So one of my goals was always to try to give kids a break. So even if they aren't engaged in instruction, I wouldn't want them on, non-educational, I mean, to me, this is a time that they just need to be off them. So I would, as I always have, I would lean way over going, I'd rather see you much more strict and then start to give than try to go the other way. Because even if they aren't being disruptive, I just think they need a break. Again, we go back to, we've been doing this a lot.
Break from the electronics.
screens.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Again, whether it be YouTube or whatever, wouldn't be the end of the world if we didn't have Chromebooks, in my mind, right? Again, I just saw another study that said, don't throw away your textbooks.
Right.
The psychological that comes with the actual tacit and reading. Again, I know we don't have all the research, but it is continuing to go.
The
Past
pendulum
wasn't-
is,
but-
definitely swinging back.
But to your specific, yeah, I would absolutely put in, constraints on being able to bring your own device in. I mean, I certainly wouldn't allow it without specifically having a contract or a parent having to sign off on the fact that a device is coming, whether it be for liability or other. I wouldn't want a kid's device in my school without a contract with the parents.
For policy 524, we do say that under the responsible use guidelines, that they should be using their digital devices, networks, and software in school for educational purposes and activities, which what I see coming in isn't really being used for that, other than the kids that are taking those classes that require, like they need Microsoft and they can't get it on their Chromebook or those kind of things, but
Yeah, I would agree that
and there's
Only
a lot of
use it
iPads, yeah,
only for those
personal
that,
computers.
that absolutely need their personal devices for those classes, otherwise none of the other ones are allowed. what do you guys do do you know is that the same?
Yeah, so they're allowed to bring their own device, but for PSEO, it has to be approved by the principal.
Okay,
What about non-PSEO?
No, they're not.
You're just not allowed
No,
to
they
bring
just don't.
a
They have
device?
to use their school-issued Chromebook.
yep,
So no iPads, no,
No,
yep, I would agree with that then,
And
the
that
same.
would be my lean as well.
Mm-hmm,
Just simply because it's gonna clean up a lot of the confusion, but it's gonna
Yep.
take a bit to make sure that staff is completely trained on what exactly it is we're doing, the reason, why. Not even so much the reasoning why, but I think they all get the reasoning why, just based off of the results we're seeing right now. But what are the protocols? You know what I mean? Do I have a list? Can I share that list? What is that type of stuff? You know what I mean? That's the stuff I need to iron out and figure out, moving forward. But that's logistical stuff, that's dealing with resource.
For what Bourne was talking about with like getting a break from Chromebooks and all of that, do we have any data to show like how, like the math classes that have started going towards more of the textbooks and all of that, has there been a positive outlook from
Yeah, I
that?
haven't shared this with students, I shared it with staff and with the school board, but I did a late work /F report last year compared to this year, first quarter, with the changes that we've made. And again, there have been many, so it's hard to kind of nail down what specifically, but they all contribute. We saw a 58% decrease in labor first quarter this year than we did last year. And that doesn't mean anything unless you correlate it to student success. We saw 62% decrease in Fs first quarter as a result of the changes that we made. So I think you can unequivocally say, yeah, we've definitely moved the needle. I mean, even if my data is biased by 20%, we're still talking 40%. I mean, that's not insignificant. And so therefore, there's enough there for me to say, yeah, we absolutely adjusted.
What other questions do you have or discussion that you'd like to have?
I just want to start the conversation and see where you guys are at. That was always kind of my lean anyway. It's your own computer. The whole getting the contract, stuff like that, that was never even in the back of my head at all. But again, it would add credibility to it and a legitimacy to it that would hopefully make it stick. And then the other part of it would be is that it would be uniform across the board. So in the second semester, this is what we're doing. These are the reasons why. Send it out to parents, send it out to teachers, students, the whole 9 yards. And anybody that wants to come talk about it is more than happy to sit down.
Yeah, that's really what you're looking for, is that dialogue, that if somebody really wants to be able to bring their own personal, that it, you know, you're putting the onus on them to have a conversation, not the other way around, that they have the right to bring it in, and then it's up to you to try and police it. It really should be the other way.
Yep. And again, one of the reasons I want to have this conversation with you guys as well. So,
And I think there's a clear line then if we do it based on who actually has the need for it. You know, they have
right.
How
proof
does
that they
the-
do.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Nope, you're
How
good.
does the current policy like apply to like smartwatches and stuff? Because obviously that's gonna be the toughest thing to
I don't-
see to police and
I think it
enforce.
would go right to what you said. One, the policy. defines-
Oh, yeah, that it's not being used for educational purposes.
Yeah, it's not, but again, policing it is a hard part. You know what I mean? I can't be everywhere at once. So it's one of those unique jobs where you know you're gonna fail every single day because you can't split yourself into 1,000 pieces, and who wants to live in police state anyway, Ted? You know, when you see the things that are affecting learning, when it becomes a distraction, then you're kind of forced to.
Is that a thing that you could possibly get assistance from the teachers?
Oh, yeah, they're in it with me. I mean, we're seeing this movement because it's been accepted by parents, students for the most part, but also teachers are doing a better job this year. We still see it in spots, and we're gonna see it. Kids are gonna try to get away with what they get away with. Teachers' heads are gonna turn, they get all, I'm fine with that. But it just needs to be addressed. We're seeing it consistently in certain places. So,
Because you don't currently require smartwatches to be taken off and put in a pocket.
no.
And again, as long as the phone's on, it likely is sending data to the smartwatch.
As long as it's
And it
within-
might even have its own data plan
As
itself.
long as it's within a certain range is what I'm told.
Or it could have its own data plan. Yeah,
But again, how much time do you want to waste facing that and starting this?
I get it.
That'd be tougher.
I get it. I know.
Arguments, and then, again, it's which battle do we want to fight?
Yep.
I think we can start with this.
One of
Yeah,
our
maybe
junior high teachers does a good job with having her phones put in the pockets, which it's not that common where they're put in the pockets, but for that particular class, and she has another student check to make sure they're off, which is nice, and if they are caught on, then I think they're compensated.
They come-
Yep.
But I'm guessing you're not at that level of detail with every teacher saying they need to be off.
No, we're not at that level of detail.
I was gonna say, but our policy doesn't say they have to be off either, so you'd have to,
But we could update our policy.
that's what I'm saying, you'd have to look at updating the policy to say, hey, when it comes in the room, they have to be turned off and put into the pockets or whatever. The other thing, even though I'm not gonna be on here anymore, the other thing I would do is, you know, if you're gonna allow personal devices for PSEO classes or whatever, you still have to have some language in there for if they get caught showing YouTube or Netflix and whatever, that they then, hey, after the second time, you don't get to bring it anymore, you know, or something, you know, but
That
you.
would be maybe part of the contract.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying, but you should have something in, because otherwise you leave it open-ended.
And we know exactly which students, so I'm guessing he would be able to keep an eye on what the activity is, if they're hooked to the network using their personal device for
That'd be a
those
question
classes.
for Adam on that.
Okay.
Cars and
No.
technology are.
Could you do it as they only get their personal devices for those specific classes versus all day? Then it even more limited.
It depends though. If I got downtime, I mean, I got two kids right here that are probably done with their assignments in their own classes within the first 20 minutes, and now I can catch up on my college course. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Certainly don't want to clip their wings, but it would just
Good
come down
point.
to a code of conduct. Hey, this is what we're doing. Be responsible. I trust you guys will. You know, you've proven that you can be, so let's just do it this way.
Yeah.
And are
At some
you,
point in time, we have to teach that as well.
and are you finding they're bringing both their Chromebook and their personal device, or are they just using their personal
No, they're
device
just using
instead?
their
Yeah,
personal device, yeah.
that way they're
I
not
think
carrying
I have
around two,
Chromebooks
Yeah.
in here that have never been picked up,
yeah.
you know. But again, that would be all the more reason for me to, again, I'm gonna keep pushing for Chromebook. It's one.
So were you just looking for ideas and
I'm
then,
looking to have the conversation and see where you guys are at. I can draft some stuff up. Jeremy and I can talk about it and then share it out with you guys. If you guys wanna take a look at what we're thinking.
I don't think you're gonna hear us say, you know, you're being too strict on it. I don't think you've ever gotten that feeling from us.
No.
So, you know, we would continue, I mean, unless somebody says otherwise, we'll continue to support that you, again, you know what our goals and objectives are. I mean, we've only got the kids in mind, and the research and the data proves that, you know,
Good luck. I would assume you're going to the
Can't even
county.
talk about the attendance.
It wasn't my fault this time, though.
I know.
The other guy was here.
I know, but you heard my piece.
we could have given you the floor, I'm sorry.
I'm just glad we're talking.
Yeah.
so, yeah, if you want to kind of start that and then you can bring it to the policy committee and we can look at how we could potentially add it into the policy.
But don't let us hold you up.
Yeah,
I mean, the next semester starts,
Yeah.
Yeah, January
Yeah.
13th,
And it's
so-
about doing it right or doing it wrong, and it's gotta be done right, because we were able to bridge cell phone policy and see these results because we did it correctly. I wanna make sure we're doing it correctly.
understand.
Everybody's been communicated with, all the conversations have happened ahead of time. And this is, I honestly have this conversation in the lunchroom at least once a week.
Sure.
Because you know, guys, you're doing it for yourselves, just let you know.
Mhm.
So, that's where we're.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions for me? Thank you for your time. I
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you.
don't get to leave yet, though.
Of course not. I'm gonna go check on my kids.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
sounds good.
all right. Moving on to the final reading and approval of the following policies. So we've got the student attendance one and the policy 522. So do you want to go to, head to 522? Or do you want to start talking about,
New business. first.
No, we can go to 522. 522 is the changes that the legislature has made for Title IX. This is the one that Terry Morrow from MSBA, they updated at one point, and then we had to update again this summer. Made changes to it this summer, so we made the appropriate changes. So nothing major, just following the recommendations of MSBA on the Title IX 522 policy.
oh, any questions on that? If not, do I have a motion to approve policy 522?
So moved.
Motion by Laura Size, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joni Olson. Is there any discussion? If no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Policy 503, student attendance.
Lots of changes to this policy. We did have our committee looking at it at school. They're the ones that have made the recommended changes to it. I know it was brought up at our study session about parents having some say in why their kids are home sick or when they have to get doctor's notes and whatnot, so we did get a little bit of clarification on that. So if they're in a sporting event or in an activity and they're gone the day they have an event that night, they have to bring a doctor's note saying that, clearing them to be able to play that event. If they were gone on a Monday and the event is Tuesday night and they're back in school on time like normal, there is not a need for a doctor's note. So it's only the day of when they participate.
So does that mean if they're gone the whole day, they can still participate even if they have a doctor's note? Because that doesn't make sense to me. If you can't make it to school for even half the day, why are we gonna allow them then to participate in whatever activity?
But what if they were at doctor's appointments all day?
Okay, but I mean, if the doctor's appointment's all day, 8 hours?
Well,
Yeah.
I've had to take my kids to Rochester.
No,
before.
I'm
It's
not
been
saying,
a
I'm not
full
saying,
thing.
that's
Yeah.
different though,
Oh,
but I'm
okay.
just
Oh, yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why it's with the
That's why the
doctor's
note.
note.
But does it state though that, okay, a doctor's note, I had an appointment at 9 o'clock, my kid doesn't come back to school, I have a doctor's note?
You're saying the time frame?
Yeah,
Yes.
the time frame, because the way I was reading this, there's no time frame. It just says if you have a doctor's note.
Right.
But you miss the whole day? I mean, again, if you're going down to Rochester or something like that and it takes the whole day, that's a different.
Yeah.
But you're going over to the Mankato Clinic, your appointment's at 9:30, you don't come back until 3 o'clock?
Yeah, I think there would be,
That would be a weird situation.
it would be a weird situation, and that wouldn't be, it would be excused to the point of, you brought a note back from your appointment. However, there would be some discussion on, okay, if your appointment was at 9 o'clock, why are you bringing this back at 3 o'clock saying I can play? That would be some work that Mr. Rysdam and Nikki would have to take care of, so.
Right, but we're trying to eliminate the need to have discussions, right? I mean, we're trying to get a policy that's clear enough, that a lot of conversations don't need to be had, right? I mean, that would be the goal.
Nice. If I may, I think the first thing you're gonna have happen is that if I have a doctor's appointment, hey Janice, my kid's got a doctor's appointment at such and such time, blah, 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 it's in Rochester, you know what I mean? We will have okay, and the next question is what time will you be back? I mean, she usually has this stuff, she has passes written out, she has all this stuff communicated already. It's not like it's a surprise doctor's appointment. If it's a surprise doctor's appointment, they're probably not coming back anyway, right? It's something that's immediate right there. But if this is a doctor's appointment that's scheduled, Janice is called 2 or 3 days ahead of time. She knows where they're going, and that might just be part of the situation. If you want your kid to play, maybe that's what it is. That night, you need to disclose where the doctor's appointment is, how long it's going to take, when do you expect them back in school? I mean, we can check those boxes on the front end, so we can eliminate the discussions on the back end. But they're gonna communicate that they're gonna be gone from school before they go to the appointment, 9 times out. I would even say 99 times out of 100, right? Every once in a while, I get absent-minded. I would definitely forget, my wife never would, but I totally. I am, so.
But if they call in and say that they have a doctor's appointment, can Janice or anybody ask what time it is, and the parent doesn't have to give that information?
No, they don't, but I would say if you want your kid to play, we need to know to expect you back. And they're gonna say, we're gonna check them out for a certain time, right? Doctor's appointment's at 10:30, okay, we'll have them checked out at such and such time, right? Okay, are they planning on playing it? Okay, great, what time can we expect?
With a note that they went to the doctor's
Right.
appointment.
I'm just throwing out ideas of
Right,
a way that
because
There's
that
gonna be
paragraph could
situations, yeah.
possibly be reworded.
Well, again, I think what we're trying to avoid is them being gone the day of an event for no reason. And then still gets the benefit of playing in a extracurricular activity, even though for whatever reason they went to the Monday night football game tonight. didn't come to school and then they still get to play basketball. That's, I think, what we're trying to avoid, right?
Yes, but that's also in here. Work at a business except under a school-sponsored, sleeping in or coming late to school is not excused. Coming home late from an activity, school event, field trip, or work at a business is not an excuse to sleep in and come to school late.
And what Nikki was saying to me is if they're sick, you don't want them contaminating the whole team. Like if they're
Right.
so sick,
Right.
they're not coming to school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the doctors know to clear them.
So I've had instances where headache in the morning, but by noon, headache is gone. Never goes to a doctor.
Under this policy would be excluded.
But again,
It is excused 7 times, or 6 times, 7 times, sorry.
To play the game,
But not to participate,
not
no.
to participate in sport.
even if they're here half a day,
Participate in sport.
even if they're here half a day,
Because I don't think, 10 minutes late, they
The new
cannot.
policy says you have.
10 minutes late,
They
and they
can't be more
can't
than 10
participate at
minutes late.
all.
And that,
Regard, okay,
right, yeah,
but
that's,
unless it's excused.
unless it's excused doctor's note or a school-related activity,
Okay, so again, going in the ditch,
not excused.
Yes,
What?
it is.
That is
Yes,
excused.
it is excused.
okay.
Yeah, it's excused, but when you look in the participation in extracurricular activities, it doesn't cover it in Part D.
I thought we were gonna put those together, so it was only one link. Oh, it's on the same policy.
So it's excused, it's a
Yes.
school excused absence, right? It's a school excused absence, but it still doesn't allow participation,
Well-
according to this.
It's only if, so you're saying that
Oh, I
the
see.
ditch is an excused absence?
Yes.
Okay, so this says that if they have an unexcused absence, they can't participate. So if they have an excused absence and they were there, whatever the,
If they call in and say, my child went in the ditch, they're gonna be late for school, that's an excused absence.
And they can play because
And they
it's
can play
excused.
because it's excused.
Okay,
because then isn't there something in the athletic book or the athletic handbook about that you have to be in school for a certain amount of time to be able to play? But then if the reason you're not there is an excused absence. I haven't looked at the athletic book, so I don't know.
So if a student has a headache, they they don't come to school right away. Now, let me look
According
at
to
this.
policy, you need a doctor's note to be able to.
and we don't get a certain number of those type of excuses from the parents?
I think under this policy, it's.
6.
Be here in order to play.
So you do get 6?
6 events in a semester, the parent or guardian will be notified by letter requesting doctor's note for any further absences. The 8th event in a semester, the parent or guardian will be notified by letter requiring a doctor's note for further absences for it to be excused.
But that doesn't include the day of play, though. This doesn't include the day of play of, this
Like,
is
I just look
different.
at that as separate, like, I look at that as their
Yeah.
attendance is excused. When I go to Part D, participation in extracurricular
Yeah.
activities, I get a different sense. Like, I can participate if I was involved in a school-related absence, then I'm allowed to participate. I cannot participate,
School initiated
I can participate in that,
as an unexcused.
and I can participate if I have a doctor's note. But then I feel like there's a little gray area, just a little bit. Like, does that, I feel like I can only participate if
Student
it's
may
a
not-
school-related absence. That's how I feel I see
Or a
it.
doctor's note.
I think there's,
Yeah.
it's too much gray area there.
So the question is the verbiage school initiated absence.
Maybe,
And it should be excused absence rather than school initiated absence.
maybe. If that's what you're going for, and maybe you're not, maybe it's, you want it to be
No, I think
school-related.
that's, we want it to be
Mhm.
excused, because again, we don't have a crystal ball to, you know what I mean? We are gonna have kids going to ditch.
Absolutely.
We are going to have kids that are late from school because maybe their brother or sister couldn't get up, you know what I mean? Those type of situations, and if we call in, it could possibly be excused.
Yeah, and I guess that's, I mean, using that example, I guess I'm asking, don't we want to have some of that type of flexibility even for participating in a sport? So again, if an older brother or sister is more, 12 minutes late because of a younger sibling or whatever, if they were 12 minutes late, are we really keeping them out of a sporting event because of that? But Jeremy, you're saying they get 6 of those type of events, ditch, brother couldn't get up, whatever.
No, I think that's the first part of that's the overall attendance policy. Then we get into athletics and how it contributes to athletics. So the 6, 8, whatever, that's our procedures for calling, documenting, making sure that everybody's whatever.
Excused and unexcused
Yeah, you get
absences,
6
okay?
and then all of a sudden you get a phone call, or you get 8 and then all of a sudden you have to have a meeting. That
Okay.
just sets up the common protocol for anybody, doesn't matter who they are.
Okay,
We're talking about, if you go down to B, that's when we're talking about student athletes and what their expectations are, so. this
Activities, just not athletes,
Activities.
activities, right?
Activities,
Okay.
you're right.
I just want to make sure we
100%,
clarify.
100%. Yep.
fair enough.
And so this would cover those students that are taking place in activities. So it's all one policy, but one deals with attendance, general across the board, when do we engage? The next one is how do we handle those situations with those students that are in activities?
All right, so
Let's
no,
do separate things.
all right,
Just
so
mention, yeah.
let's only talk about competing in the activities.
Yep.
They're half an hour late because they went in the ditch. Does this cover and allow them to participate?
Yes, because it would be an excused absence.
And so then maybe we would change the wording to excuse, like, first it would go through the office. The office would make the determination whether it's excused or not excused, and then your AD or whoever would make the determination whether participation could happen.
But it sounds like parents get 6 excused absences by simply stating their kids should be excused. Ditch, headache,
But part
There's a whole different set of criteria that you have to,
okay? That's why I'm trying to figure out where these are tying together then.
right.
Because if you're telling me, again, headache doesn't get there till 9 o'clock, isn't an excused absence, even though the parent is aware, calls in, and says this is the case.
So if a student is absent from school due to a medical reason, he or she must present a physician's clearing.
That's one of the things I have, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
I have to have note or. I
yeah,
know.
physician's note clearing the student to participate that day. The note must be presented to the office secretary or activities director before the student participates in the activity or program.
So my understanding is it's excused as far as academically. You are excused. A parent can call and say you have a headache, you can come back to school. But there's a whole new criteria for this, for the activities, kids involved in activities.
But he just said that if they're excused academically, that then applies to the athletic or to the activities.
So if you're,
So I'm just wanting to clarify.
Right.
That's- that-
Nope,
it's-
nope.
No, it's good.
Yep.
so if you're gone on a day, there's an activity, and you want to participate that night, gone for medical reason, an illness, you have to have a doctor's note to participate that night.
So if you have a headache in the morning, you
Yep.
need a doctor's note to come back
Yep.
Yep,
and play.
yes.
But what about the ditch?
Then that would be, I think, different. That would be.
That's
like a
not a
family
medical,
emergency, not
that's
medical.
not a medical reason.
I
That would be-
understand,
Where does that fall in
but why,
in this? Where is it defined in there?
Well, that's
'Cause
where they were
there's a
talking,
bunch
the
of gray.
school-initiated or excused absences will be accepted. And, I mean, if you just reworded it that way, I think that would even work.
so again, why am I going to a doctor for a headache?
That's the question.
Probably not.
Is what we're.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then how am I gonna get a doctor's note
You're not.
for being a
You're just not
half an
gonna
hour late
participate.
because of a headache or a migraine? Hmm?
You
Then the
don't play.
policy's saying you don't play that
You
night.
don't play, you don't
Okay, and I'm
participate, so-
asking, and I'm saying I'm not sure that I would want a policy like that. Again, if a parent is involved, I'm asking for more flexibility, that the parents are held accountable and responsible for the fact that if they're willing to call in and say, hey, my kid has a headache, we've taken aspirin, we'll see if it's gone by 10. I mean, why are we saying parents don't have that ability?
I don't know that we're not saying that. I think what we're saying is we see that becomes a common trend with some parents, therefore, this would alleviate it, because if my child gets migraines, and I get a doctor's note saying that my child has migraines, and it's in the nurse's office, that note clears them to be able to play.
But, so for that particular day, though,
They would
because
be,
you've got a note covering like 6 months. And so then do you need the parent to say, hey, they had a migraine this morning?
Mhm.
No doctor's note.
No doctor's note,
Other than
because
just
you have
blanket.
you have a standing order from the doctor.
So if they're
Okay.
diabetic, if they
If
get
they're
migraines,
diabetic, if they get
have any
migraines.
pre-existing medical
Right.
conditions, that would all be on file.
Yes.
And I suppose the concern with even just a headache is it could be something more too, I suppose, that could be contagious. Is that kind of like the
Well,
reason
if
why
it-
going in the ditch is not gonna spread anything to
If
the
it
rest of
can,
the team?
if it's one of those things that is a trend that we're seeing and continuous, then obviously if you have a headache that often, you should be seeking some medical attention.
Well, and so that's why I'm saying that even if the policy allows the parent to say they have a headache and excuse them, I would think we'd still be talking to parents if it's a recurring thing. Regardless of whether they're getting to play, not playing, whatever, I would think we're having conversations with them. Your son or daughter continues to be every, third day late for school by half an hour. You're telling us it's a headache every third day. This is concerning. You really need to go see a physician to find out why this is occurring. Now, the fact that they got to play and activities or whatever, I guess I have no problem with that, but at some point, we should be talking to them. But to just say, again, that, I don't know. So there's no leeway on that currently, as far as anything medical. The parent cannot be the reason that they're late, headache, without a doctor's note.
Even if it's just a one-off thing.
A one-time deal in a semester.
You put a limit?
Well, we do with excused absences. So I'm just trying to understand why that
No,
isn't
we
carrying over.
can, and I'd like to have Nikki here, but she's in Texas right now for a conference. So,
Maybe we should wait on.
So we just need to kind of
I think
rephrase number
there's some-
5 there.
Gray area that needs to be.
Well, obviously,
worked out
right, the way it
before.
used to be is if you weren't in school a half a day, don't care what the reason is.
Yep.
Even if you're in Rochester for an appointment, doesn't matter. If you aren't in school at least a half a day, you do not play, period. And I realize that we're not wanting to go back to that, I get that. But I just think there's gotta be, I don't know, some sort of balance.
I just think you need to look at it, because if you, the reason we're even doing this is because parents were abusing just calling in and saying, after, oh, my kid got home late from whatever, they're not coming in, because they're not feeling well, and then they'd come in 2 hours late. There was a lot of abuse of that happening over the last 5 years. And that's why we're trying to clean up the I agree with you, but what is it? I think you guys are gonna have some more discussions on this as far as, do we allow for activities? Do we allow to have a parent call in twice during I'm just gonna say, fall season? One time during a fall season, then after that, the headache or upset stomach doesn't work anymore, but I do agree, because sometimes a child does get up and they have a headache, but then they're here by 9 o'clock. Well, now all of a sudden, if they don't have a doctor's note, you're not playing. Where the old one, like what you're saying, you had to be in school half a day. But the old one also is if you were out the night before at an activity, wrestling, basketball during the winter, you had to be there the next morning.
Right, even if you don't have an event that day, you
Yes.
had to be there
You
the
had to
next
be in
day no matter
school.
what. Or you weren't playing in the next
Because that's where
game.
you're seeing a lot of it too, is, they're gone and then, well, I can still come in and go to practice then, but I don't have to be at school till 10:30.
Sure.
So it's just, I do think that from my perspective, and again, I'm not on the board after tonight anymore, I think you guys really need to not vote on this tonight and do a little more fine tuning, I think.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think there's some gray
Send it
areas
back
that
to
need to
the
be worked
committee.
out.
With some recommendations, so what, Mr. Reisner, what are your thoughts on if there were, and I know Nikki's not here, and that's really who we'd like to ask, but what if there were 1, 2, or 3, whatever the number is, per semester that fall in that category of, it can't be an entire day.
Right, but I think the other part too is that you'd have to look at, okay, will I get 2 headaches? Do I get 2 stomach aches? Do I get 2, my shoulder feel, you know what I mean?
Well, so,
Is it just 3 blanket, no matter what they are, but it's a total of, you know what I mean? So we gotta look at all those things, and I understand both sides of this argument. And I think this is also a line that with everything that I do, is something that I have that internal struggle with as well, is that how tight is too tight, right? You
Sure.
don't want to squeeze
Mhm.
all of the initiative, all of the fun, all of the everything out of everything, because things have to be a certain way.
sure,
Principals conference they went to, keynote speaker said, if you're one of those guys that hates it when kids get away from stuff, get away with stuff, get out of the business. They're getting away with stuff right now.
right,
And if that's what's gonna drive you, then guess what? You're not gonna make it very long. So there has to be some leeway, because you don't wanna live in a school where it's that tight. Half the fun I have is the stuff that happens off the cuff, the stuff we make up in the moment.
right.
So,
And again, I agree. I don't want to see it abused.
but that's the other side of it though too, like Mr. Elke was saying, this was an issue. When I was in the classroom, after a game or before a game, I could tell you the kids that weren't gonna show up the first 4 hours. I could listen to you, I'd be a heck of a lot wealthier had I had out. And he's absolutely correct, so where is that common ground? Where is that thing where we're allowing kids to be responsible? Again, that's what we have to teach as well. We can't do that in this super tight space, but the same token, we have to make sure that they understand that they have to do the thing, you know what I mean? It's just a weird balance. These kids are almost adults, at some point we gotta.
And then also, I think doesn't the MSHSL have guidelines also that you have to follow as far as attendance and if you're in school or out of school? I thought there was, maybe that's changed over the years, but I thought that was like minimums, but schools could go stricter. So, I mean, that's something else that you may wanna,
I'd have to look, I
I
haven't
thought it
looked at
was,
that in a
but I
long
could be
time.
wrong on that, so.
Their bylaws are really tough to read, so
Yes, they are. So-
maybe that's a good question for Kevin.
Which is good and bad, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you write things so
Yeah.
convoluted that then it's pretty darn open. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
Prove to me that I'm not compliant with your policy.
Yeah. So,
So you would be open to some flexibility, Mr. Eisdam?
I would, but the way we have things structured right now, this is Nikki's, wheelhouse, and I'll support whatever, she wants to go forward with her department. That's kind of my role with this stuff, is that I'm gonna support the decision that's made.
Sure.
And I get behind it 110%, because I trust people that are on 100%.
The one student representative, do you have any input?
Well, if there's room to abuse it, some people are gonna abuse it, so it's a tough place.
Is there anything around how many practices or that student athletes have to be at in a week in order to be eligible and stuff like that? As a coach, I would just get random, hey, not gonna make it today. Why? You'd never have a good reason, and it was frustrating.
That's on each coach to determine what that is, so. But I could see where the frustration would be with that.
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
in here at the last meeting at the study session, and I brought up the previous meeting about makeup work and how it was kind of very vague. Is there any you were gonna find out, is there any deadline, or did that get changed?
That was my question too, because the thing that talks about the deadline of when they have to have their makeup work done is crossed out.
This
So-
is for attendance policy.
Mhm. So it says
Is there any-
students that are excused are required to make up all assignments missed or to complete alternative assignments. But then the next paragraph says that they have to, it must be made up within 2 days from the date of the student's return from school. So the first statement, if that's kept, that's leaving it open that they don't have to,
Right. It could be
Trying to
one.
make up all assignments missed or to complete other.
That's having them work with the classroom teacher though, right?
Mhm.
Well, the thing is though, is you want to have it here though, as, again, it would be like what you were talking about, here's the minimum, but where can you expand on that, right? This is what our policy says. As a teacher, I can say, I'm going to give you a little bit more time to do X, Y, Z, but policy says is this. So I think a time frame has to be stated, whether it's 2 or 3 days.
It is stated in
Really
here then?
doesn't make a difference one way or the other.
It is
But
stated 2
For
days.
me, I would like to see a
Oh,
time limit put on there.
was crossed off. Gee.
and that's just, and that's, I mean, that's for just the kids too. I mean, if one teacher allows 10 days and one teacher allows 2 days, and you miss, multiple times throughout the semester or something, you might get confused.
Right, the old policy says within 2 days from the date the students return to school.
And does that accumulate,
Guard-
like if a kid is, if a
4
student
days,
is gone
gets
4
paid.
days, do they get, because that's how it works in my school.
They get 8 days
Yep,
now.
2 days per
yep.
absence.
2 days per absence.
I mean, I would think you'd want something consistent.
Yep.
So, I don't know if you'd want to get rid of that, or if you want to
I
add it
guess that's
differently,
not how
or-
I read that.
Yeah, you'd need it somewhat consistent, I would think. But- Yeah, I know, but that's. how-
I would say that if they missed 4 days, then it's 2 days from the day they came back, period.
Yeah.
That's how I would read that, but again,
Yeah. So maybe another little thing to fix, clean up.
mhm.
And with vacations now, they need pre-approval. With
So
the-
then they would get, if they go on, I was just gonna ask this, so if they go on a
Yeah.
vacation for 5 days, they get 10 days to make that up?
Yes.
You'd probably almost need it.
We encourage them to get their work prior to it.
Right.
but-
Because if you came back on
Isn't
Monday is the
given.
day that you come back, so then they'd have to have everything back on Tuesday?
No,
After
I'm
4
just
No,
saying
yeah,
for a
I'm just saying,
vacation, if you know
yeah.
you're gonna be gone, it's not a sickness, then all of a sudden you're giving them 10 days to make up stuff that puts a lot
What is
of,
all the materials given to them prior to their?
well, it
absent?
could be, should
Could
be, I
be,
don't know.
yeah.
I was just
Situational, yeah.
asking if
Yeah,
that,
no, I know.
because
I know what
that's,
you're saying.
sickness is one thing, family emergency, but if you're going on vacation, should you get 2 full weeks to make up all your stuff? Because
Right.
that's your choice to pull your kids out to go on a vacation.
Right, they have a checklist for family vacations, are excused with the completion of the vacation checklist.
Okay.
So they have a checklist that they've created.
But then they'd still get the 10 days, though, if they're gone 5, to turn everything back in. Okay.
Well, according to our policy right now,
Right now.
it's infinite.
Yeah.
They-
No, no, I'm
No.
just
Yeah.
asking, even with this, though.
So is there any other discussion, or, because we'll end up postponing the approval of this indefinitely until everything gets squared away?
Yeah, or, have Nikki at the next opportunity
I'll
to
make sure we
discuss
have
it so
Nikki
that we
get
can
good
have,
Yeah.
like,
At the study session
Yep,
on
that would be,
January 6th.
Mr. Isdam, do you know what Eric wanted to talk about? He said you know what his,
Not the specifics, he and another student came in and talked with me about it, and it's much of what we're already discussing right now, with attendance and the big thing for him was, where does it stop, where does it end? How do you, when you get to this 24, 23, whatever absences, because what can you do? You know, the state, there is no anything, counties, especially after you turn 17, there's nothing, there's no, you know, and then what can the school do? We don't have anything in place, and there should be, and so again, it's a lot of the same conversations we're having, but he was talking about gross absence more than anything else. So I was thinking, you know, if I swung it right, I could only have to be here one day every 2 weeks, you know, according to state policies, mandates, whatever. If I'm a good enough student, well, heck, I'd catch up, no problem. It doesn't happen, but, you know.
Sounds like he'll be able to come to the next meeting though and discuss it.
Yeah, true.
These are questions every district is asking right now.
Attendance is a hot topic at the state level right
Yeah,
now.
they're talking about changing the laws.
PLCs, it's, I mean, and
Do we
they're
have
talking
perfect
about that
attendance
at the
awards?
legislative level
No.
as well. What are we going to do? Are we going to support? What can we do to support?
And what are things leaning? Are they leaning towards wanting to have a more strict policy or?
They're just starting the conversations now
But-
as to it, because I mean, there used to be at the county level, you know, consequences.
The truancy
Truancy would
aspects.
be one county up where I was at took away your driver's license.
Sure,
So,
sure.
yeah, and it's a lot of,
So legislature's
to
hoping to
school.
go that direction?
I don't know
Awesome.
if they are now.
There's-
They want to start the conversation.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was an
Because it's becoming
article
enough of an issue.
that they're finding, you know, with the current policies that are written, there's so many of those gray areas that they need to take a bigger picture of it, so.
I know they want it to become more strict.
I'm gonna have to.
How they're going to
I'm
do
gonna
that,
step
I don't
out.
know.
I'm gonna step out and I don't think I'll be back, so Laura will have to end the meeting for me, because,
Katie had to leave too.
yeah, I have a senior.
Heck, Jeremiah Johnson had perfect attendance through high school.
And you'll never forget that.
No, he's proud of it.
Yeah.
Unequitable to recognize that.
So do we
Okay.
need a motion
So you
to
need a
pause?
motion for
I'll
this.
make a motion to pause indefinitely.
Postpone indefinitely.
Postpone indefinitely.
I'll second it.
That's Tim Burke motion and Tim Elke second.
The two that won't be here for that.
Nice job.
Yeah.
What?
Their last two votes.
And imagine that, it's postponed indefinitely.
Yeah.
It's on you now. It's on all you.
We pushed it down the road long enough.
Yep. What else can we?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so new business.
New business or 12A is approve boys volleyball cooperative with Casson Manorville School District. Looking at getting into, we have some interest in boys volleyball, not a lot of interest, however, our conference at this time, there aren't any schools starting the boys volleyball. Nikki's been doing some research. Closest one to us would be New Prague. However, New Prague is not opening it to outside districts. Casson Manorville is. And it's up to parents to take kids there, make sure they get there, make sure they get back. The parents have to pay the fee for the student to play. The school district would have, in order to be part of this cooperative, we would have to pay a little bit as a school district. They don't have a set amount yet, but we would have to pay a little bit for a student to participate there, and then the student has to pay the athletic fee. But those are the only, that's the only expense from the district at this point. So, and because of the rules with the high school league that you have to have it, the cooperative in place 30 days prior to the first practice, If we're gonna allow this, we need to approve it tonight in order to let Cass and Manorville know so we can get approved through the state within the 30 days of that first practice.
Would it just be us and Casson, or are there
No,
others?
it's Casson, Triton, Stewartville,
Could even be Wasika.
Byron,
Because I talked to Mr. Hediver and he said, we're not gonna do it.
yeah.
No, they're not.
So the
As far as
question is,
boys
it's open-ended
volleyball.
on how much we would have to pay,
We'd have to pay a portion of it. They're gonna divide,
but I mean, a
Based
portion
off
of what
players?
though? Of,
they're thinking it's gonna cost about $10,000 for this program to go on. And they're saying 5,000 of it is gonna be paid for, divided up amongst all of the schools that are part of it. And then the other 5,000 is divided up amongst the student athletes. So if there's 10 schools part of it and it's $5,000, we'd be paying $500.
How many students do we have interest?
We've had two that have come forward being, one extremely interested. The other one has shown interest also.
What season are they holding that in?
Spring.
spring.
Spring?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Practices are
Don't need gyms.
outside of they would start at the talk has been, practices would start at 5:30. So. But just looking at opportunities for the kids and
Yeah.
So can we approve this but not participate if we choose at a later date? I mean, is this one of those, we've got to at least put this in place so that we have the option, but if we don't want to participate, say in a month, that we can pull out?
I don't think so.
Or if
No, I
both
think
kids
one-
decide not to play?
Yeah,
if
I
we
think
don't
we're
have any
stuck
kids
with
to
it.
play, then we would, obviously, we wouldn't be responsible for it. But if there's kids that want to play, then we would
Yeah.
have to be put in.
Yeah, if you had, I mean, if it was one kid wants to go and you're part of it, you're paying the $500 or whatever it ends up being for that one kid. If
And
we
then
don't have
they-
anybody go, then we're part of it, but we shouldn't be paying for any
Right.
of it, yeah.
How does that compare to other cooperatives? What is our soccer one with Wasika, or hockey, or?
We
To
don't
be
pay
honest,
anything.
We don't pay anything for those.
Yep. And then the pairing for cross-country and wrestling is a shared, because we got kids and we pay for half and they pay for half. But that's a different thing than like what we do with Wasika.
Right.
I guess I wish it just said this would have come a little bit earlier, than,
She got the information last Thursday before she left.
yeah.
I had been seeking out to find out who was gonna play. And once I found out Wasika wasn't, I figured it'd be too far away to go. So here it is, Casson.
Yeah, that's a drive.
So.
It is a drive.
Would we be responsible for hosting events?
Nope.
No.
What's Nikki's recommendation, yes?
Nikki's recommendation would be to approve this. It'll be the first year of boys varsity volleyball and JV volleyball through the high school league. I'm surprised Mankato doesn't have anything at this point, but they don't.
Exactly.
And that's-
St. Peter.
That's
some of
something
those
to
bigger schools.
eventually, when,
New Ulm?
if they start up, then.
If
we
they start
co-op
up,
with
then
one
we
of
pull
them.
out of that
Yeah.
cooperative and move to a closer one.
Yep.
Oh, this was all set up by the big schools in the cities.
Mhm.
That's the only reason it is. And that was point blank said it, like the Region 2A committees, when I was on that, they were like, nope, we should keep it a club, but the big schools in the cities want it, so it'll get pushed through, and the rest of us will have to figure out what we're gonna do.
Is the student interest regardless of if it's in Cass and Mancheville?
They would go anywhere they possibly could.
That's what 45 minutes, 50 minutes.
One way.
But I think the survey that went out asked specifically about CASM, so everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess at
I
this
guess I don't
point,
have
I get this, from my perspective, at this point, for $500, I would say probably go ahead with it and see how it goes. I mean, if all of a sudden the student doesn't go or quits halfway through the year, then we kinda got a answer, I don't know. That's just my thought on it.
Well, the likelihood is that places are gonna get closer.
Yeah.
Again, people just weren't ready to go
Right.
for this season, but you are gonna see it. It will come to
Oh,
all the
100%.
schools. It will.
Absolutely, it will.
And I think maybe
It
if there's a
will.
good experience, more interest will come, so I'm in favor of it.
I mean, the downside is it may kill baseball, it may kill,
Track, golf,
Yeah.
any of those spring sports.
but
No.
yeah, I guess I'm with Tim. well,
Give it a
have you made a
chance.
motion?
No, we haven't.
Have you?
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve.
I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Approve resolution to set levy in 2024 to be collected in 2025. Do you,
Nope, you can go.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Enjoy
Thank
your,
you.
David.
enjoy your decorating.
Appreciate all your work.
Have a
The
good
sixth.
holiday.
Yeah, you guys as well.
Merry Christmas.
This is just the official certification that we will take our full levy that needs to be signed and sent to the state.
I'll make a motion to approve the full levy amount. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sorry.
I'll second Sam's.
All right. Do we have any further discussion before we go to the resolution? All right. Go ahead, Annika.
Heiss,
Did you say me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Bird,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Olson. Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, upcoming meetings is January 6th, organizational meeting, and I think we are adjourned at 7:27. Thank you guys for your service.